Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for UFC Vegas 86. Paul Shaughnessy here with you. Producer Megan's on the sticks. Cody Saftik is on the line. This episode of the Dogger Pass podcast and all episodes of the Dogger Pass podcast are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code DOP when making a new account to get a match up to $100 on your first deposit. Cody, remember last episode I told you I was just like, see, the thing about my style is that, like, if I have 8 plays and, if I hit like 3 out of 8, I'm having a profitable night. Well, I think I had 5, 6 plays, and I went 0-5-1. I had the no contest. I had Ali scrabbed by sub, which obviously there was an eye poke in the first 30 seconds. So that's the only one I didn't lose. Felt good not losing every single bet, I suppose. Absolute bloodbath. It was bad. But I maintain that Stinko sub was the only way to play Stinko. She needed to pull guard from like the hop. Like that was her only path to victory, what she needed to do. I know that like no coach is gonna tell you in your corner, just pull guard. Just pull guard. But like that was where she had literally all of her success.
In the first round, sure, she almost got the armbar with like 10 seconds left. But in the second round, she more or less pulled guard, and she was running on fumes by then. So, yeah, the pay-per-view in Canada, abysmal. Last week's card, abysmal. And then you'd love to feel good and have a confidence week and a bounce-back week. But this is a 14-fight offering, and there's just zero confidence. Not a whole lot of dogs that you love. The dogs that you are taking, you definitely don't like. You're not super fond of. So where do you find the value? Probably in totals, over-unders, a couple of props here and there. But again, I mean, it's a big card, but it just feels like it's so lost. A lot of these guys are either making their debut, they're Contender Series alum, they're, late 30s, back end of their career. A lot of them are capable of having a great performance. A lot of them are capable of a lot of inconsistency and throwing out a stinker. So what side are you going to fall on? I don't know. Again, totals, props, things like that, singular bets, you might be able to find a couple niches. But for parlays, it's like you got to put some of these guys together on tickets. And the more that you add, just someone's going to go and do it. And the last couple of weeks, that's what we've been running into, is that somebody's blowing it at the top. The Canada card a bit, just like I said, terrible. Last week, one stinger at the top, which otherwise felt good going into the fight. And then walking out, it's like Charles Johnson fights a career best performance on a couple weeks' notice and suddenly has takedown defense. Tough one. And I mean, Maxim still could have won that fight, but he didn't. So it was a close fight. It just didn't go our way. So yeah, I mean, the confidence is a little bit low, and I got to just shake it off. We got to feel good about this one, hit a couple dogs where we can. Other than that, hopefully hit a couple value plays and some props and take it from there, my man, Paul Shaughnessy.
I'm surprised the UFC's not doing something, I don't know, like good. It's Super Bowl week. There's like, going to be tons of people in Las Vegas, and it's like they're holding the card at the Apex. I mean, I guess that kind of just shows the appetite for like the product right now, because like you'd think that like maybe they would rent out like the Pearl at the Palms or something like that, put together a little bit more of an event. Like nobody can attend this thing. It seems like kind of like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it does, because it's in Las Vegas for sure. It's like the Super Bowl is here and there's UFC, but again, it's just going to get lost. Like you're living in the shadow of the Super Bowl. People are in town to see the Super Bowl. Even if you tried to throw on a small, not arena show, but like a bigger venue than the Apex, let's say. I don't know how many people who are already flown in town and have hotels and are going to the Super Bowl are suddenly going to say, hey, let's drop $200 to go see a UFC event the Friday before. The Saturday before. So again, I don't know. I think the UFC just has a regular schedule. They need to pump things out to TV partners. They realize it's a Saturday, not the Sunday. So the UFC fans are obviously going to watch this, and they just want to keep costs low. Again, when you look at it, it's like how many of these guys are contenders? A few guys, especially at the top of the card, main event, co-main event. Besides that, it's like they're absent. It's either aged veterans or guys just breaking into the company. So when you have such a large roster and you have such a commitment to X amount of shows, you just got to throw them out. And then you and I, we have that same commitment. We have a commitment to our sponsor, prizepicks.com. Check it out. We have a commitment to them that we have to have X amount of shows as well. So every week you're just going through the grind. It's not like you're half-assing it, taking a week off and not doing the tape study. It's that there's so many guys that what it becomes is low-level MMA, where there's a lot of variables, right? It's not necessarily the best guy versus the best guy. And low-level MMA is not a bad thing, right? Because you and I made a lot of money 5 years ago in this game when There was a lot of low-level guys in the UFC, but those low-level guys fought good guys, and you could cash in on those opportunities for prices like minus 230, right? Nowadays, it's not good guys against bad guys. It's bad guys against bad. This guy's going to crush that guy, and he's anything better than a minus 400 favorite. And even in those scenarios, you still run into some 17-0 prospect from Kazakhstan who should beat Charles Johnson, let's be real here, but doesn't. So drops him in the first round, almost casts him in a Darce. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, but didn't. So it's the bounces of gambling. Not just our sport, any sport. Bounces of gambling, but it swings one way and it swings the other way. Clearly, we've been swinging in the wrong direction, but we got to get this thing going. And once we do, we'll build some momentum.
Yes, sir. All right, let's get some momentum here. We got Joe Pyfer taking on Jack Hermansson in the main event. Pyfer is a minus 260 favorite. Hermansson can be had for plus 220. Who you like, bud?
Yeah, so again, this is a card that I don't love a whole lot of underdogs. By no means do I love Jack Hermansson, but I'm certainly tempted in a Hermansson bet. Joe Pyfer's got a great story, right? So similar to a Themba Garimbo, you're prone to like his story and the adversity that he's had to overcome and the bad spots that he's been in his life, and he was homeless and all these opportunities. And Dana actually was the one that stepped up and bought Joe Pyfer the house, right? So on the Contender Series, he breaks his arm against Dustin Stolfoots. It's a tough setback, but it doesn't say anything about him. It's since then the great story and the Dana helping you out. And then the matchmakers have fallen in line with that. He's fought Ozzy Diaz in a second round in the Contender Series, Alan Amadovsky, Jaromir Sharp, who's good but has a lot of durability issues, and Abdul Razak Al Hassan. So they've matched him extremely slowly. And then yet going from match soft to now headlining a fight in UFC, a 5-round fight, it's troublesome. Troublesome as well is that he hasn't fought 3 rounds, let alone 5 rounds. So no doubt he can finish guys, but he's finishing Jaromir Sharp. He's finishing Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He's finishing guys of that nature. So as he moves up and fights better and better guys, those finishes don't necessarily materialize. And if they don't, can you fight the distance, right? So again, you haven't seen him fight the 3-round distance, and now we're putting him in a 5. And not to mention, like, even the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, it doesn't look like he's tired, but it doesn't certainly look like he's got pedal on the metal. He's not a volume puncher. He is getting a lot of finishes, sure, but the Dustin Stolfoots fight goes 4.5 minutes. He had landed 12 strikes. The Ozzy Diaz fight made it into the second round. He had landed 26 significant strikes. Alan Amadovsky, quick finisher, 4 minutes, 14 strikes. Jaromir Sharp, 3.5 minutes, 14 strikes. And Abdul Razak Al Hassan, his last time out, 7 minutes into the fight, and he had landed a career best, tied for his career best, with 26 significant strikes. So he's not a guy that's going to wow you with volume. Doesn't look like he's pushing necessarily a huge pace. I don't know. I don't know if I love this guy. It's the price tag. It's the minus 260 price tag when you don't know if his cardio holds up. You don't know if he can fight elite level competition. You don't know any of that stuff. And yeah, his wrestling, sure, that's something he can fall back on against shitty guys. But how do you do when you move up? Now, Jack Hermansson, maybe he is getting a little bit old in the tooth, but here's a guy that's fought 5 rounds twice. He lost a split decision to Sean Strickland, and volume's not an issue for him, right? You look at the Chris Curtis fight. He outlands Chris Curtis 100-43. He kept pace with Sean Strickland, landing 137 significant strikes. Landed 122 against Marvin Vettori. Landed 148 significant strikes against Jacare Souza. Volume's not a problem for him. Cardio's not a problem for him. Going 5 rounds isn't a problem for him. He's fought leaps and bounds better guys. And you can say chin's a little bit of a concern for me, Cody. And I fully understand. Chin's a concern, but Roman Delite's top-ish guy. Jerry Cannonier, the man. And then before that, Thiago Santos, like a long time ago, where Thiago Santos was also the man at the time. So you're going to need some devastating power puncher to take this guy out. And Pyfer, not saying he doesn't have power, he does. But he's only throwing, 20, 30 significant strikes. Like, he's not necessarily going for it. So who has the wrestling advantage? The career-long wrestler guy that I think he picked up wrestling his senior year of high school, did not wrestle in college. I'm not saying MMA wrestling, college wrestling, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm just saying there's not a huge clear-cut advantage for Pyfer in the wrestling department. The striking department, sure, he's got a little more power than him, but the volume certainly plays not in his favor. The 5-round nature of it doesn't play in his favor. The big-time experience doesn't play out in his favor, but he's a minus 260 favorite. Like, they're really feeding you this guy like he's the next coming, and he would have to prove it before that. So, yeah, if this is like an even money fight, maybe I'm willing to believe. But for minus 260, he's gonna have to prove it first. And again, not a card that I love a lot of these underdogs, but you're gonna have to pick some underdogs in some spots. And I feel like Jack Hermansson is like 2 fights back, he's tripling up Chris Curtis and making him look foolish. And now we're suddenly worried Joe Pyfer just ices him. Maybe. But 260 just seems off to me.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty clear dogger pass type of situation as far as I'm concerned as well. We just seen a lot more from Jack. We know that he can strike over the course of 5 rounds with lots of volume. Obviously, he's got very, very good grappling on top of that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like Pyfer, obviously Dana hooked him up and he had like a really horrible upbringing and was like homeless and all that type of stuff. I believe after his last fight, he like kind of like talked smack about the organization, saying that he needed to get paid more. Kind of feels like they're like, all right, well, if you want to get that bigger money, you aren't getting, Abdul Razak Khalasan, who has massive gas issues, Gerald Mearshart, who's like kind of a one-dimensional grappler, let's be perfectly honest, and has some cardio issues as well and chin issues against heavy hitters. You got to go into the Shark Tank, and I'm not saying like Hermansson's unbeatable or anything like that, but he's a guy with multiple tools, multiple paths to victory, and a hell of a lot more experience than Joe Pyfer. So at plus 220, yeah, I think it's pretty clearly a dogger pass type of situation. Pyfer could knock him out in the first couple of rounds. If this thing gets deep, you're going to feel pretty good about your Hermansson pick. Or Pyfer just is going to have, like, we're going to be like, okay, this guy's the real deal. Like, we're going to learn a lot about Joe Pyfer here. Or we won't. He'll get a first round knockout. And we won't actually know like his actual full out ceiling. But if he comes out here and this fight goes into like third, fourth round or something, and he's able to keep up that pace, keep up that power, okay, we've got a potential title contender on our hands. But you gotta walk before you can run, and to walk, he's got to get through Jack Hermansson here. So yeah, it's Hermansson for both of us in the main event as a dog pick. All right, moving on down, we've got Dan Ige taking on Andre Fili. Minus 160 for Dan Ige, plus 140 for Fili. Who you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Dan Ige, but again, it's not like I love the money line specifically because this is gonna be a very close competitive fight. Likely goes to decision. If one guy's gonna knock the other guy out, it'd be Dan Ige knocking out Andre Fili. Fili's been, knocked out a few times. And Ige, you could take a brick to this guy's head, man. You can take one hell of a shot. But likely it's going to be a relatively low output striking match. Both guys can wrestle, but their wrestling is not like at that elite level. So when they get matched up with these elite type wrestlers, they're the ones getting taken down. When they get matched up with soft guys, they might get some takedowns. But matched up with each other, there's no real clear, distinct advantage here. Again, both guys are comfortable in the wrestling department, but where Ige has largely struggled is against these Bryce Mitchell types, against, Korean Zombie, who was far and ahead a better wrestler than him at the time. Guys that can just consistently take him down because he's a small-ish guy for the weight class and lean on him. Fili's got like 4 or 5 inches of height and a 3-inch reach advantage. Well, he'll be that longer, taller guy. That might affect Ige a little bit, but again, in terms of getting that high center of gravity low enough to take Ige down, I don't see it. Likewise for Ige, he's a good wrestler, but is he good enough to take down Andre Fili with a consistent rate? Maybe here and there, maybe to spice it up for the judge's decision, which is what I'm hoping he does. But I don't know that he consistently takes him down. And again, Fili, longtime member of Team Alpha Male in Sacramento, he'll be ready for that short, stocky wrestler and that type of game plan. But one, I don't know that it works out for Ige. 2, Ige's not that guy. He wants to bang. He wants to use his superior hand speed and some decent power, make it a fun fight some of the best guys. This is a fun fight, but it's a fun fight at the end of the day. One guy outstrikes the other guy like 66, 62, and the rounds are relatively subjective. And you said, well, it could go this way and it could go that way, and then Ige ends up getting the close decision. So that's what I believe happens. With Fili, most of his fights go to decision. So you can see he's low volume in these 15-minute fights. Ige appears to also be low volume, but he's giving up plenty of takedowns in all of these fights. So again, it's tough to say, oh, well, he's only landing 40 or 50 himself when he's on his back for 7 minutes of the fight. I think in a fight with Fili that's largely going to play out 85, 90% of the time on the feet, it'll allow him to start to land those combinations land that superior speed. He's going to have to time the jab. He's going to have to work his way around that leg kick. But, pressure forward and maybe just put your will on Fili a little bit. Close decision, tight decision. I'm chasing the prop of the fight goes to decision, the over 2.5. And if I got Ige, I want a better money line on Ige, so I'd probably take Ige by decision. He could blow up by knocking him out, but even in that scenario, at least he wins, not the end of the world. If he was to lose and lose by knockout, that would be devastating. But I just don't, if he does lose, that's fair. I can see that. I just don't see him getting finished.
Yeah, no, a lot to unpack there. We got, Ige. I'm not going to be surprised by an Ige knockout, to be perfectly honest. You think about that Joe Anderson-Brito fight, it's just like Andre Fili's been through a lot of wars. We've seen a whole bunch of, tough spots that he's been. He's super, super experienced. He's not even all that old, but it's like we've watched this kid grow up, and he's very, very well-rounded. I do think it's going to be kind of like one of those fights where it's like, maybe Fili, if it does go to decision like you're saying, that like maybe Fili gets a little bit more on the volume, but the more impactful strikes, and we're in the Apex, so it's small. The judges can hear the impact a little bit better than they would in like a full sold out crowd. Those will be obviously on the side of Ige. Knockdowns would probably be more likely coming from the Ige side. Ige, durable, chin just absolutely is made of steel. But yeah, I wouldn't be stunned by a Dan Ige. I don't know if I would be chasing the prop there. You know me, I love like degen, long shot type of stuff. There is a plus 850 on Ige by KO round 1. I mean, he's not getting a submission. It's like plus 650 for him to win in round 1. It's like I'd probably even get like greedy and take the extra 200 points there to get KO 1. I don't know. If they fought 10 times, I figure he at least does it once, which would make it bad value. He may do it twice though. So it's like a micro edge. I don't know if it happens, 2 times out of 10, but plus 850, I think it would be worth a little sprinkle. But yeah, Dan Ige on the money line is where I'm going here as well. He's it's like Dan Ige, we know how to beat him. It's just like, but Andre Fili does have half decent wrestling, but is he the level of wrestler that has really neutralized and controlled Dan Ige? I'm not so sure about that. So yeah, Ige for both of us. We've got Robert Bryczek taking on Ihor Potieria. Bryczek a minus 200 favorite. Potieria a plus 170 underdog. I mean, this Bryczek guy, he's coming out of Poland. Guy's super, super jacked, super, super strong. I will give him that. I watched a few of his fights. I'm not seeing like anything like, I guess that's why he's only a minus 200 favorite against Ihor Potieria, who's, just a more or less a losing machine, a losing machine in the UFC here. I don't know. He doesn't look like anything crazy. Like I don't see some sort of like watch out for this prospect moving forward type of guy. He's got a nice little run of finishes here. And then there was a fight like a couple years ago that they went to decision, and the guy they lost to by decision really doesn't have like a great record or anything. Watched a little bit of that fight. I don't know. All in all, he's a guy I would really struggle to, in his debut in the organization, to be making a play at minus 200. I think it's dog or pass. Do I want to bet Ihor? No, not really. I mean, the only person that he really had any success against was the ghost of Shogun Hua. Round 1 against Bolaji, he had some success as well. Like, he's obviously pretty dangerous, and I feel like this fight just has so much volatility that if I was forced to make a pick, which I am for the purposes of this show, I'd be taking a shot on the dog Ihor here. What about you?
Yeah, I'm actually in the same boat. Taking the shot on Ihor, but it's just one of those guys that you love to fade. We always fade this guy. We can't wait to fade this guy, and now the proposition is taking him. And similar to Julia Storlia-Renko last week, Storlia-Stenko, we always fade her, and then finally it's like, oh, favorable matchup, so you take her, and she just, no good. Bottom line is no good. So are you just asking for it by taking Ihor? Very likely, but let's talk ourselves into it. So yeah, for Robert Bryczek, it's not exactly he's a prospect like you mentioned. He's 33 years old, now making his UFC debut. He's a guy from Poland and yet never fought on KSW. Top organization in Poland, offer very nice contracts. And he was more so seen as like a lower level journeyman type guy with a not great record. So Octagon MMA signs him because he's available. And yes, he's on a nice little win streak, but they've just been matching up real salty. I mean, he fought in a guy that was 11-12. Lee Chadwick, love Lee Chadwick. Lee Chadwick's 39 years old and rocking a 28-17 record. So you're fighting not guys that are necessarily the caliber of the top European guys, and now you're making a jump to taking on top international talent. It'd be a bit of a stretch. They initially booked him versus Jacob Malkoun near the end of last year, and he would have gotten killed by Jacob Malkoun, but he pulled out. Smart guy. Now they book him where Albert Duraev probably still loses to Duraev. Duraev pulls out, and Ihor jumps in. Here's the interesting thing to me. So again, when we're looking at the red flags on this guy, one, supremely jacked, as you mentioned, Paul. And so does he pass the USADA test? Is USADA still a thing? Does he have to take a drug test? Does he have to change his regimen? I don't know. But certainly leaving the confines of Europe to come over to the Apex on Super Bowl weekend with all this noise and all this chaos, I think it would affect a guy. He's so heavily built. His last fights are 58-second win, 241, 125, 157, and 17 seconds. All of them by first round finish in under 3 minutes. So like with that muscle, can he even keep this going? Is it genetically? Is he that big? Or is it enhanced? And to that point, I think enhanced. When he was just that journeyman guy in Poland, he fought at 170 pounds. His last knockout loss to this Kike Brito was at 170 pounds, and it was just less than 3 years ago. Since then, he moves up to 185, and he gets massive dogged up, fighting low-ish level guys on the European regional scene, beating them, just, smashing them. I'm not saying can smashing, but smashing these guys in quick fashion. And now you're jumping into the UFC. It's a bit of a tough one. The other thing is we love to shit on Ihor. We absolutely love to shit on Ihor. But his losses are to Rodolfo Vieira, or Rodolfo Bellato, Carlos Ulberg, and Nikolai Negamarianu. All not bad guys. More importantly than that, all those guys are at 205 pounds. Ihor has largely been fighting guys that are 205ers. And against Rodolfo Bellato, he's a sizable underdog. Goes into this fight. Everybody and their mother has Bellato, myself included. He's the top ticket play. And he damn near knocks him out. He knocks him down. He puts a beating on him. He lands like 80 significant strikes in a round and a half. And then we knew that his ground game suspect and Bellato would have that big ground game advantage. And as soon as Bellato got that first takedown, well, it was all downhill for him. But again, at 205 pounds. So it's crazy to me that Ihor just took that beating. And now for the first time in his career, on short notice, he's taking this fight on like 2-3 weeks. Because he can pack a punch. The little success that he does have when he competes is the guy can absolutely hit. It's that if you take it and you return fire, he can't take the damage coming back at him. At 185, he's going to have even more power and has a better chance of maybe taking some of that return fire. You know that his cardio is not good, but at least you've seen him fight into second rounds. Whereas Bryczek, again, like, Ihor's also only 27 years old, now at his natural weight class, with 5 fights in the UFC against mostly good level of competition, taking on this 33-year-old debuting guy, doesn't look like, he's a natural and has largely fought salty competition. So like, yeah, like they're not the kind of spots. If we're trying to like be smart and be safe and like pick and choose and this and that, it's like those are the spots that you're gonna get burnt in the ass more times than not, right? Taking a guy just like because he looks good in a picture and the record looks pretty good and the 6 first round finishes, like I get it looks good. But is it enough to get behind this guy with any modicum of confidence? To me, no, it isn't. So is it enough to bet Ihor with any modicum of confidence? Yeah, I guess. It's dogger pass. This is a clear-cut dogger pass situation. If the dude would have scored as a 4-1 underdog in his last fight against Bellato, and he was inches away from doing it, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. But those are the bounces of MMA. He didn't get it. And now hopefully he is being undervalued and can cash a plus money ticket his second go around because people will see the result on paper, but don't necessarily see how competitive it was. Bellato, I think, is better than Bryczek. Maybe, maybe not, right? But I think Ihor in his natural weight class, 20 pounds down, could surprise a lot of people.
All right, moving on down. We've got Gregory Rodrigues taking on Brad Tavares. Rodrigues is a minus 240 favorite. Tavares can be had for plus 200. I feel like a couple years ago, maybe this would be a little bit more of an interesting fight. But Brad Tavares, used to be, that chin was just so good. And the technicality, like he slows down the pace of the fight. Sometimes he makes them a little bit ugly, of course. But, he's a guy that doesn't really have all that much power. Can fight a good technical fight. He's obviously super, super experienced, but he had a chin that would allow him to hang out in lots of spots outside of, I guess, like Tim Boach. But it's like, I guess Robert Whittaker knocked him out as well. But yeah, going the full distance against Izzy and so on and so forth. Like, he's been in there with like a lot of really good fighters. The only thing I really worry about with Gregory Rodrigues is that chin. Like, he was knocked out on Contender Series, knocked out against Bruno Ferreira. But Brad Tavares doesn't really bring that to the party. So I don't have any doubt in my mind that I suppose if it's a 15-minute fight and it's just like ticky-tacky types of strikes between the two of them for 15 minutes, that Brad Tavares could pull off the upset here. But even in a win against, Chris Weidman last time out, like, he didn't really press. He didn't really impress. I like RoboCop, but minus 240, I don't love the price by any stretch of the imagination. But I think he gets the dub here. It's kind of a tailor-made matchup. Somebody who doesn't really have the power to put his lights out, and I think skill for skill and probably size will be a big disparity here. Gregory Rodrigues is absolutely enormous for 185 pounds. So G-Rod's the pick for me. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree as well. Brad Tavares is very serviceable, like you said, but he's a gatekeeper. He's a gatekeeper, not a top 15 guy, but a like top 20-ish guy, willing to fight whoever and give them rounds. And like you said, lots of durability. But he's a round guy. He doesn't pose a whole lot of issues for guys, right? He doesn't have that big knockout power. His last fight against Chris Weidman, he's got Weidman hobbling and bobbling on one leg from the first round onwards, right? And like, yeah, you can call it respect, or you can call it Brad Tavares doesn't got no pop in his hands, baby. Last time he knocked out a guy was Krzysztof Jotko. It was 5 years ago, right? And it was in the third round, and there's only like 2-3 minutes left. Third round knockout of Chris Jotko. Prior to that, you'd have to go all the way back to 2011 when he knocked out Phil Baroni, my boy, currently in a Mexican prison for murder. My boy. That's a long stretch, man. 2 knockouts in that period are not great. As you mentioned, he generally is very durable. Oh, Robert Whittaker knocked him out. Big deal. Like, he fights some of the best guys. He was competitive enough against Israel Adesanya once upon a time. We like what he does, but he doesn't have a ground. I wouldn't say he wouldn't have a ground game. He's not offensively looking to wrestle. He's not looking to take you down. He's not looking to establish top control. He's not looking to land ground and pound. That's not Brad Tavares. His takedown defense, dude, he spent a lot of time in Las Vegas. He can stuff a takedown. Would I say he's a solid wrestler? No. But I saw he's got solid takedown defense. Also not really. But yeah, historically, I think he's rocking a 82% takedown defense, and that's 20 plus fights in the UFC. He's not a bad wrestler. Is that he uses that wrestling to keep the fight standing and then tit for tat, tit for tat. As we start going towards a damage-based system, he's not landing a ton of damage. As we start to go towards those big shots and who gets rocked, again, he's not really rocking his opponents or landing those big shots. He's just landing clean, precise, technical kickboxing without that real big wow factor. Now, if you were going to do that, it's fine. You got to bring up that volume. The volume again is just not there. Against a one-legged Weidman, he puts up 70, and that's considered good by his standards. Outside of that, for the most part, it's been fairly lower. When I look at Gregory Rodrigues, his only real issue is that he's got porous striking defense. He doesn't move his head. It's on the center line. It's way up in the air. A refined kickboxer like Brad Tavares 100% could give him trouble. But as you alluded to, Paul, if he doesn't have that power to really get Rodriguez's respect, then you're going to have RoboCop constantly moving forward, constantly landing a few more shots, a few more leg kicks, pressing you into the cage. If you can't keep him off of you, it looks better visually to the judges. Now, I could complain all day about how I think these fights are closer than maybe the money line would suggest, but complaining just is not going to get us anywhere. We're going to have to bite the bullet in some spots and just go ahead and pick the guy. And so with Rodrigues, a guy that's on his way up, is doing some good work, solid ground game, BJJ black belt. Wrestling is not great, but as you talked about, Paul, he's so big for this weight class that he just drag you to the ground. And I can see that being a factor here against Brad. Or I could see him just using that jab, using a little bit of speed, using a little more volume, and just picking up a 29-28 or 30-27 clear-cut unanimous decision. So I know people want violence, and people want those props, and people want RoboCop by submission because it pays some crazy amount. But Brad's serviceable. It's what he is. He's good at what he does. He's 38 years old now, still fighting at a high level in the UFC because he's somewhat risk avert. But Yeah, it's just there's not going to be a whole lot of winnable matchups to come by. This is winnable, sure, yeah, but it's not going to get any easier from here on out for him. He's there to give guys rounds. Rodrigues needs rounds without getting knocked out himself or taking too much damage. It's a good fight for him. Is it a good fight for Brad? It's not a bad fight for Brad, but he's going to have to mind his P's and Q's. And at 38, he needs to up the volume, and I just don't know that I see it from him.
Yep. All makes sense to me. All right, moving on down. We've got Michael Johnson taking on Darrius Flowers. Minus 140 for Michael Johnson. Plus 120 for Darrius Flowers. Now, I know Darrius Flowers, Cody, is from Iowa. What I need you to fill in here is, I know in on Contender Series, he had the slam win. So obviously maybe he can wrestle a little bit, but it's like, is he going to go in there and fight like he did against Jake Matthews, where it was just, obviously he was fighting a weight class up. He's coming back down to his natural weight class of 155 pounds here. But is he going to fight like a striker in that matchup? Or in this matchup against Michael Johnson? Because Michael Johnson can do that. His chin maybe is a little bit questionable. But the matchups that really cause him problems is when somebody is able to stick to him, take him down at will over and over and over. I'll wait for your explanation, but I'm leaning towards Michael Johnson here. Unless, like, you tell me that, like, you know, Flowers is going to wrestle him, he's going to take him down, he's going to control him. Because I didn't really see it. Outside of a slam on Contender Series, and that's just MMA being MMA. I didn't see somebody that can, like, you know, win a sustained fight playing that type of style. So, tentatively, my pick right now, unless you change my mind, is Michael Johnson. And I basically never bet this guy, so I don't know if I'm going to bet him this week. What's your take here?
Yeah, Johnson's a guy that seems to have the superior skill set in pretty much every aspect of the game, but it goes back to, like, what's the durability like, and he's a little bit older and he's a little bit slower, and he never took a great punch to begin with, and now it's probably not going to be great. And Flowers, honestly, I'm about to shit on him in a minute, but to his credit, man, he's got 8 first-round finishes, 7 of them by knockout, and then one's a slam. He's had guys quit in the first round. He's had the corner quit for them in the first round, and he's flat out knocked the guy out in the first round. So he's not a wrestler, like you said, from Iowa. Everybody from Iowa knows how to wrestle and is pretty good at it. But he's a boxer, 100%. Not only is he a boxer, he just likes to fight. He's a tough, scrappy, I like to fight kind of guy. He had 16 amateur MMA fights. I don't know why, but 16 amateur MMA fights, then switched to pro boxing, had 11 pro boxing matches. Thing is, Paul, he's 1-10 as a pro boxer with 7 knockout losses. His one win is also by knockout, but that's who he is. He just takes whatever fights. When you look at his losses as an amateur, Seth Bass, first round triangle, Cassidy Beatley, 51 seconds. I guess it was the 5th round. Ivy Nixon, guillotine choke. Those are 3 consecutive losses, all by submission. As a pro, Devin Smith, first round rear naked choke. Jordan Larson was a 3rd round armbar. Bobby Volker was 39 at the time. You'll remember Bobby Volker, Strikeforce guy back in the day. He fought in the UFC as well, but like 40 years old, shot to bits. And he knocked out Flowers. Joe Vetipo with a key lock, Paul. What? Also knows the Americana. When was the last time you've seen that in like a good fight, like a high level fight? Who's latching on to key locks or Americanas in the year 2020 and beyond? Unbelievable. Then he goes back to boxing. Then he loses those matches. So he comes back against Ryan Ledinger. That's a guillotine choke. That's only 2 years ago. And then he hits magic. He's fighting lower level guys on the regional scene. He scraps them up. He gets a Contender Series shot because they need some guy last minute to throw in against this Georgian guy who's supposed to be good. And as a plus 240 underdog, he won. And then they rebooked him right away against Jake Matthews. And he's coincidentally also a plus 240 underdog. And he loses. Like, he captured magic in a bottle. He can box. He can maybe land that shot on Michael Johnson. But beyond that, we're talking about the same Michael Johnson that's fought all the best guys. The same Michael Johnson that's got knockout win over Dustin Poirier. You know, a guy that absolutely beat pillar to post solid guys. And yeah, he's a little bit older, and yeah, he's not operating at the same level, but against a 1-10 boxer, I feel like he's going to be in his wheelhouse, and that Flowers wants to strike first. Second of all, the guys that take down for the maybe Stevie Ray would be not considered a great wrestler, but Michael Johnson's fought in good guys his whole career. So you can say bad takedown defense against Clay Guida. You can say bad takedown defense against, Khabib Nurmagomedov. You can say bad takedown defense against legitimately good guys. Flowers, even if he could wrestle a little bit, not to the level. Like Johnson's takedown defense will check out there. Johnson actually wrestled in junior college, right? Remember when he's on The Ultimate Fighter? He was a wrestler. He can't wrestle at a high level, but he can wrestle at a low level, and that's all this is. And so now we're going to get a striking battle where Johnson's going to throw more volume, a lot more output. He moves his feet a lot more. He's got more than enough power to knock out Flowers, who's been knocked out a couple times in MMA, 7 times in pro boxing. But that being said, Flowers has enough knockout power to knock out Michael Johnson. It's the fight game. It's punchy, kicky. They're exchanging shots. Flowers doesn't have a pretty boxing record and has this long MMA record and this long amateur record. The guy's got like 40 fights under his belt, and he's still young. He's going to be a problem because he knows how to fight. Is he super talented and skilled? No, but he knows how to fight. Johnson's also had tons of gym wars, tons of knockout losses, tons of fights in the UFC, tons of beatings against the best guys in the game. So his durability is like his only question mark, and that's Flowers is really like his only thing is his power versus suspect durability versus Johnson. So what the bookmakers should have done is just fed you Johnson at like minus 190, minus 210, because people still would have bet it, and then the probability game will get you right in the gonads. But this is like a 50-50 fight here. So yeah, I like Johnson. I like Johnson to get a job done. You'll be puckered up the entire time. You'll be sweating one out. I can't go against him.
Yeah, no, I'm on kind of the same page. I faded him against British wrestler Casey. I had like, flashback, I wiped him from my brain from just like screaming at my TV so many times when Casey literally didn't try to wrestle against him. But he showed a lot in that fight. He's like, I guess like the few takedown attempts that did come his way, he did a great job of stuffing them. And yeah, he's, his record isn't impressive by any stretch of the imagination, but he's fought the who's who in this division and down at 145 for many, many years now. He's very, very experienced, and I really haven't seen enough from Darrius Flowers to lead me to believe that he's going to win a striking affair against Michael Johnson. He could totally land an absolute bomb, knock him out in the first round. We've seen it happen to Michael Johnson, but yeah, at the current prices on the market, I think Michael Johnson. I like the the confirmation bias, I suppose, that you provided me there. I will stick with my pick. Moving on down, we've got Rodolfo Vieira taking on Armen Petrosyan. Vieira is a minus 120 favorite. Petrosyan can be had for plus 100. These guys were supposed to fight back in November. Both of them made weight, and everyone leading up to the fight was saying that, like, hey, make sure you watch Rodolfo. Make sure you watch Rodolfo on the scales. He's gonna be sick. He made weight. He did what he was supposed to do, and Petrosyan was the one who ends up getting sick. I believe we were split on this program, on this fight, and I'm gonna stick with Rodolfo here. I think I've seen. If it's just a stand-up fight, of course, it's gonna lean towards Armen Petrosyan. He's definitely better at that. Rodolfo doesn't have the greatest takedowns, but if he does get the fight to the mat, obviously he's super dangerous down there. And we've seen enough from him that, like, he does look like he gasses a lot of times, but it's like he's shown that he can go 15 minutes, even if it like doesn't look pretty. Still throw those hands, get some half-decent volume up. I think, like, from a numbers perspective, like, it's probably a pick'em. Like, it is a close fight. But I'll side with the fact that if Rodolfo does get this fight to the mat and does it early when they're both dry, he does have, like, an absolute show closer. So, Rodolfo for me. I'm guessing Armen for you.
Yeah, Armen all day. And to be honest with you, when they got booked the last time, I loved it. I love the line, which I think I had plus 125 at the time. Like, Petrosyan was a slight underdog. Now it's pretty much even money. So it is what it is. But I loved it. And then they announced it during the card. They're like, the fight's off. And I was like, oh, Rodolfo didn't want no heat. And then they're like, Petrosyan's like massively ill. And they speculated that it was like anxiety related, perhaps, which I don't see because he's fought in so many badass dudes and is a badass dude. Like I can't see anxiety getting in the way, but yeah, I don't know. It's happened to guys like Tom Breeze before, and they're all fighters. It's just maybe it gets to you, or maybe it's the illness from a bad weight cut, but none of that bodes well. Now I'm like, man, I'm glad they scratched it because had he gone out there, he probably loses if he's sick, if he's not feeling well, too ill to fight, too ill to go out there and compete against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. So I don't know. Now they rebook it. Not super long after, but again, it's like, what was the illness? Was it anxiety? That doesn't do good for a Petrosyan pick. Was it a bad weight cut? Well, now you got to do the weight cut all over again 2 months later. Like, again, also doesn't really bode well for Petrosyan. And the line's not as good. So, kind of a bummer. But I'm going to pick him. I'm going to pick him for sure. Listen, Rodolfo Vieira's got a really pretty jiu-jitsu resume, right? He's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt of the highest level, and he's won all these competitions. And he's a badass, yeah, but I mean, he's a lot older. He's slow to the learning curve to come over to MMA, and all he's got is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. His striking, yeah, it's gotten better, but it's not good. It's not even serviceable. It's not enough to go out there and win a 15-minute striking battle against pretty much anybody in the division. So yeah, it's good enough to a couple shots here and there, set up a takedown, but then you actually have to have wrestling, which he doesn't. He'd be rocking a 25% takedown accuracy in the UFC. He struggles. He went like, I think 0 for 21 against action man Chris Curtis. And Chris Curtis is a badass. He's got great takedown defense. Yeah, but he's a 170-pound brick wall, Paul. He fights at middleweight because he just doesn't feel like cutting, but he's not a large man. Rodolfo cuts a ton of weight. He is a large man. And yet the desperate single legs, he caught Curtis with some clean shots because Curtis had his hands low waiting for the wrestling. I'll give him that. But it was just desperation. Like, he didn't want to keep throwing hands. He needed to cling on to him and peel him to the ground. 20 takedown attempts. When have you seen that? And didn't get them. Didn't get any of them.
I like that he stuck to trying a game plan.
That's fair.
I'm not going to beat this guy at boxing. I should try to, wrestle. That is going to be my best path to victory. As someone who's picked Rodolfo Vieira, he knows what he's good at, and he's like, I'm gonna lose a striking affair against Chris Curtis. He's self-aware. I like that.
No, you're absolutely right. And now he goes into a fight with Cody Brunridge, who's got one weapon, which is the right hand, and some low-ish level college wrestling. And he goes 1 for 7 on takedowns attempts against Cody Brunridge, failed to hold him down, had his position and couldn't do anything with it, got knocked down. Dude is doing the stanky leg and has to rely on Brunridge being an absolute idiot with 0 ring IQ and pulling guard on a guillotine. Actually, I'm happy because I think we all had Rodolfo and that one bailed us out. But like, good God, man. You squeaked by Cody Brunridge, relying on him making a critical mistake for you to get on top and submit him? Bad look. The fight with Chris Curtis, yeah, sure, that's just another bad look. His fight with Dustin Stoltzfus, he's down 2 rounds in the third before he got the submission, getting outstruck 67-49. So not a great look. His fight before that against Anthony Hernandez, we all remember it. The biggest gas job in the history. Hernandez is so OG, or not OG. He's legit. He's legit. I'll give him that. He's a stud. But still, like, Rodolfo had all of his positions. Against Stoltzfus, took him to the 3rd round. Against Oscar Piechota in his debut, had to take him to the 2nd round. Against Piechota, he had 3 takedowns. Saparbek Safarov, not just one, the 2 takedowns. Against Anthony Hernandez, 4 takedowns. Against Stoltzfus, 3 takedowns. You know what that means, Paul? That means he gets on top of these guys in almost all of these fights. And yet he needs to get it 2, 3, 4 times to eventually submit them. So literally the only thing that he's like an ace in, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's not like, dude, if you're on the mat with 2 minutes with this guy, you're done. Like, no, these guys are hanging on the ground with him for 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time. Hernandez choked him out on no other reason than he just gassed himself out. Yeah, he's getting better, but to what level? To what leaps and bounds? So we've shit on him. Let's shit on Petrosyan a little bit. But Petrosyan's issue, yes, is his takedown defense. But we talked about Gregory Rodrigues earlier. Not the same level as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And he was on Petrosyan's back 2-3 minutes. Petrosyan's got a broken nose. This guy's fishing for rear naked chokes. And once you do, he scrambles. All these fights, they have to take him down multiple times because he continuously makes them work. And when he gets back up, he's hell on wheels. Volume, nasty with the leg kicks. Once your lead leg's gone, once your calf seizes up, then do you think Rodolfo is going to start completing those takedowns? No. He's going to keep getting tired. He's going to get more desperate. He's going to get TKO'd in the 3rd round or lose a decision. And last but not least, Rodolfo's cardio is shit. It really is. Whereas Petrosyan, all of these fights, they go generally 15 minutes for him. And he is just throwing bombs, man. He maybe lost the first round against AJ Dobson, ends up landing 118 overall, landed 127 against Gregory Rodrigues, despite also dropping around. Kale Barra has a wet blanket. He'll do that to you. Christian Leroy Duncan, guy was supposed to be some awesome undefeated striking sensation out of the UK, and he absolutely demobilizes them. So striking's leaps and bounds better than Rodolfo. His cardio's leaps and bounds better than Rodolfo. His durability's leaps and bounds better than Rodolfo. His heart is leaps and bounds better than Rodolfo. Literally the only thing is, yeah, he gives up takedowns, and Rodolfo is the master of jiu-jitsu, so he'll probably get on top a few spots. It's if he survives those few spots, if he gets back up a few times, if you can hear the end of that first round, this thing's going to trend towards my boy. So I got him pre-fight flop, but I'll probably also bet him if he lasts the first round. But like, let's say he gets taken down and controlled in the first, loses the first, doesn't get submitted, and I can get a good plus money going into that second or third. He's not going to quit on me. I'd rather bet these guys that are going to fight for my dollar than these Darrius Flowers. He's got one round in him kind of guys, you know? So yeah, I gotta go with Armen Petrosyan. Just like, don't get sick and don't have a bad weight cut.
Don't be scared, because it sounds like maybe he was potentially scared.
Don't forget your Xanax, or just talk to Mara Bueno Silva. She'll hook you up with something to just keep her even keel.
But don't ask for her because like she doesn't have the stuff that gets like that isn't like
passes the test.
Yeah, it doesn't pass the test. Somebody else probably has the better stuff that doesn't actually get flagged by USADA.
Sure,
I mean,
but it's like
when does USADA end? Because that's coming, right?
I think it might be. I thought it ended at the end of the year. Like
still handing out those like stupid jackets and stuff.
Oh, are they? Yeah, I really couldn't tell you. I'm sure that the UFC will always have some degree of testing, but the testing doesn't matter. Like Bryczek earlier on the card, we talked about him. Who cares if he can or cannot pass a drug test? No bookie has ever come back for a no contest 3 months down the road. Doesn't happen. So like as the bettor, you almost want the guy to be cooked up to the sauce. But all jokes aside, yeah. Rodolfo Vieira is past all of the drug tests that have been faced in front of him. He's been accused since his jiu-jitsu days, through his MMA days. He's passed all the tests. He's out of a gym that's notorious for being a juice gym, and it's still passed all of his tests. I'm sure the guy's good to go. But again, if it was, oh, damn, Rodolfo Vieira was some super sweet, Brazilian jiu-jitsu prospect, and he transitions over and he learns all these other skills, and it's like, okay, great. But yeah, man, he's 34, 35 years old, and he's at Fusion XL, right? So who's getting him ready? Phil Rowe, Jacare Souza, Alex Nicholson? Does Mike Perry still hang out there? Like, just not the guys that are gonna get him ready for a premier mixed martial arts contest. And Armen Petrosyan tends to slip under the radar to a lot of people. It's not that like that sexy fighter on the roster, but like, I really like this guy. And of course, he's Armenian, so you're going to have to kill him. And those are the kind of guys I want to bet on, right? They're going to not just call it a day and say, oh, well, this fight's not going my way. Like, show some resolve, show some resolution. Pat, man, I would say show some effing gumption. So let's go with that. I got him to get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of like drugs and sport, do you see on like on the X machine the other day that like Peter Thiel, some billionaire, is like backing the steroid Olympics? Love that. I'm in. I will watch that. He's like, oh, well, they're like, and like their little advertisement is like, I'm the fastest guy in the world, and you've never heard of me. It's just like, because I would never pass a test. That's a I'm totally. I will watch. I will watch that. 100%.
I don't want to see like an average Joe against an Olympian, because they always talk about that, like just to show you the difference. I'd like to see this guy's the world record holder for the 400 meter dash, let's say. And this guy, it would have to be like a fringe top 10 guy. He couldn't be a top 5 guy on juice. It would have to be like, this is the number 12th ranked guy.
Yeah.
And he is allowed to just take whatever he wants. Yeah, I'd like to see, like, does it close up that much of a gap? Because all my MMA fighter friends, all the guys I've worked with, all the guys I've talked to, they're very adamant that like steroids is too much of a competitive edge, because they roll with guys in the gym that are flat out no good, that are currently on a cycle, and it's just like, Cody, they're not the same guy. It's not the same guy. Trouble with the UFC is, because of all the screening testing, is it's hard to cycle on and off, because it's random testing. It's hard to peak your body on and off because you don't know when someone's knocking on your door for a piss sample. So they're generally coming in here a little banged up, a little sore, a little tired. And if that's the case, give me the Armenian guy who's not going to quit. Maybe he's sore, maybe he's banged up, maybe he's tired, Paul, but he'll fight for it. I get his last fight, he didn't fight for it because he was too ill, but I'm hoping that was the doctor's decision because you got to save a guy like that from himself. So, yeah, I would have liked to have got the plus money I had on him last time, but I'll take the even money he's offering up now.
Yeah, we got Carlos Prates taking on Trevin Giles. Prates is a minus 260 favorite. Giles can be had for plus 220. Who you got?
Yeah, so these are one of these spots where it's like you can see Prates being your apple pie shitter. I mean, like there's a lot of, I wouldn't say inconsistencies with him as much as like there's a lot of unknowns. Clearly the guy's a banger, 30 years old, Brazilian, and he absolutely wallops. He used to fight for One Warrior Series a little bit over in Southeast Asia and had fought some decent guys. His grappling is okay, his wrestling's okay, but it's mostly he puts hands on you, you're gonna have an absolute problem. He came on the Contender Series against Mitch Ramirez. Again, solid performance. You see a lot of these Brazilian fighters that have been coming in recently. They're not necessarily the jiu-jitsu guys that Brazilians were known to be in the past. A lot of them got Brazilian Muay Thai, and they're coming in, guns a-blazing. He's got a little submission game in his back pocket. He's got some wrestling based on his strength and physicality, but for the most part, you know where this guy wants to take the fight to take place. Trevin Giles, meanwhile, he's got the skills to beat him. Like, in theory, he's got the experience. In theory, he could fight a few rounds, and you're not going to totally worry about him. But he's always been undersized. He's always been lethargic. And he's a guy that, to me, has just never really cared about it. Like, you'll remember back when he used to be a Texas area cop, and he was balancing a career as a cop. He still might be, actually, but he's balancing a career as a cop and a pro fighter. So he's 1 foot in, 1 foot out, never fully committed himself. Was a badass on the LFA scene, on the legacy scene before jumping over to the UFC. But since then, it's been massively mixed results. Now, yeah, at his best, dude's got to win over Roman Delites in an absolutely awful fight. But he does. He's fought in Dricus Duplessis. He fought Michael Morales, Gabriel Bonfim. He has that grappling match with Mike Malott. Like, there's a lot of experience there. But it's the wins. The win over Louis Koski by decision. Awful fight. And then his fight with Preston Parsons, which is his last win. Again, split decision over a guy with no experience. And no, all these things that we're trying to give him, he might have a grappling advantage. Oh, he's got some experience advantage. Oh, he's got some decent technical boxing. Like, it's just off the table. He goes in there, he looks lethargic. He just walks through the motions, never quite really gets out of first gear. And one has to wonder if the UFC gave him his walking papers, he'd be one of those guys that retires a UFC veteran. He would not go and fight for another promotion. He would not try to go back to the regional scene. He doesn't wake up in the morning and crave a fight. This is his job. And he's going out there and he's looking like he's going through the motions of a job. And the UFC's in results saying take on these unheralded Brazilian guys that just want it way more. Yeah, he's making his debut, but he's got the firepower to hurt Giles and really put him off. Giles might be able to tie him up a little bit. He might be able to slow this thing down. He might be able to lean on him, use some of that savvy veteranship, maybe try to take him down. But again, watching the Preston Parsons fight and the Louis Koski fight, it's just like he's not getting out of first gear. And now as he gets older, he's still only 31, I guess, but there's just no improvements over the last 4 or 5 fights. He still is getting a little older. He still does have that second career at the back of his mind. I don't know that I really want to run to the ticket window to have Giles as my guy. So is the apple pie shit potential there? Yeah, I can see it. But you got to also like the guy you're looking to fade with. I'm looking to fade Rodolfo Vieira because I don't think he's very good. But I also like Armen Petrosyan. So the fight makes sense for me on a betting standpoint. This is a fight where it's like, I might be interested in fading Prates, but Giles is not the guy to go ahead and do so with. So as a result, Prates is not super high, I guess, on my parlays or my list of confidence. But yes, I think he does win the fight. I think he's going to stand in the pocket. I think he's going to touch Giles up. Giles also doesn't really have the cardio. Not that he doesn't have the cardio, doesn't have the volume, right? If he throws volume, he will get tired. If he doesn't throw volume, he can pace himself out and he just falls behind on the scorecard. So I just can't get behind him, man. I can't get behind him. Keep in mind, remember he fought James Krause, a lightweight, who took the fight on 24 hours notice and probably bet against himself, and he still squeaked by a split decision. Like, he's not reliable. He's not trustworthy. He's made no improvements since that fight. Can't do it, man. Can't do it.
He could definitely, like, the problem with Giles is, yeah, you just don't really know what he's gonna do, like what his game plan is going to be coming into most fights. The volume's never really been great. The best volume he ever had was against James Krause, that exact fight that you're talking about. James Krause on 24 hours notice. He put up 71 significant strikes. I mean, most of his fights go to decision, or a lot of his fights at least, when he's not fighting, guys that are way better than him in the, the Drickus, the Michael Morales, the Gabriel Bonfils of the world. Most of his fights go to decision, and we're looking at like 27 significant strikes. I think what he's going to struggle with the most here, from what I saw from Carlos Prates on Contender Series, is guy's super, super long and uses every little bit of that reach, has nice technical striking. Giles is going to struggle with that. If Giles puts on like the wrestling strap and makes this a really ugly fight, I think he's very, very live. Pratos is going to be the pick for me, but minus 260 UFC debut versus a veteran. I mean, there's 14 fights on the card. I'm not going to be forcing any action on Carlos Prates myself, but he will be my pick. We got Bolaji Oki taking on Timothy Cuamba. Oki, a minus 225 favorite. Cuamba can be had for plus 190. Damir Hadzovic was supposed to take on Bolaji Oki, and Hadzovic, pulled out. I mean, Hadzovic's in a tough spot. He's kind of like, he realizes that's like, all right, I'm excited, and that's the only reason I still have a job. He's just like, but he needs a win. He needs somebody who doesn't have a chin. I'm not saying that he dropped out of this because he's like, this guy looks like he's like an absolute warrior. But, I mean, he was already like Hadzovic was a bigger underdog than Cuamba. Cuamba was on Contender Series, had a really, really boring fight. But, a lot of times you're like, oh, well, they're just calling this guy in off the couch. It's like he had a knockout finish literally last week. So he's in shape. He's jumping up a weight class for this matchup, so he's going to be giving up a little bit of size. I'm not entirely sure what to do with this one, Cody. I would be tempted, just to take the favorite, take Oki because of size and preparation for this fight. But it's like Cuamba is not coming off the couch. Like, he literally had a fight last week, obviously had a training camp. So, yeah, I'll side with size here, but we'll see where the number goes over the course of the week. And yeah, no plans to bet it yet, but what's your take here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a late replacement. To be honest with you, Oki was the pick of the week against Damir Hadzovic, simply because, yeah, what does Damir Hadzovic do? He stands in front of you and he throws down. And in order to throw down, just like the game is passing him by, Oki's one of these guys that can take a better punch, is bigger, faster, stronger than him, probably lands first, probably puts Hadzovic away. And if for whatever reason it was like, damn, I'm just going to take the path of least resistance. He's strong and he can wrestle a little bit. So I don't doubt that he would have done to Hadzovic what everybody else does to Hadzovic had he wanted to, and taken him down as well. So I really like that fight as a debut for Oki. Moving on to Cuamba, it's not that I don't like the fight. It's just, yeah, there's just a lot of variables. Cuamba's from Las Vegas, trains down in Vegas full time. So not only did he just fight, as Paul alluded to, 8 days ago between fights, he fought in Las Vegas 8 days ago, lives in Las Vegas, trains in Las Vegas, and is on the short list of replacements. So he's moving up a weight class. Obviously, he's not going to cut weight back to back. But yeah, he's here not because of the spectacular knockout last weekend. It was a nice one. He's not here because of that spectacular knockout. He's here because he was the local guy with his hand up, ready to go. And Oki's not exactly an easy matchup. The tough thing about Oki is when you look at him on paper and when you watch the tape, he fights such a weird variety of guys. Like Assis Silva's 0-0. The very next guy is 13-0. God damn. 0-0 to 13-0. The very next guy's 8-13. When he fought Dylan Salvador on the Contender Series, I'll fully admit, I took Dylan Salvador. I know Dylan Salvador. I'm very familiar with him. I like him. He's got excellent high-level Muay Thai. This guy can absolutely scrap. High-end experience, fought in good guys. Striking's not an issue for Dylan Salvador. Oki made him look foolish. Oki made him look foolish, similar in the ways that we were talking about a couple weeks ago with like Marcus McGee versus Gaston Bolanos. One guy's legitimately a really good striker. The other guy, you don't know much about him. He floats weird. His rhythm's different. His timing's different. But he packs a wallop of power, and that's Oki. The Nair Malkian fight, it was 13-0. It's 2 years ago now. He didn't look great, don't get me wrong, but the fight went the distance. So he's going to be one of these guys that can absolutely take your head off in the first round, first round and a half. Eventually, he'll have to slow down. Eventually, have to pace himself a little bit. But again, as I mentioned, he has a bit of wrestling. He's capable of slowing these fights down. But you like somebody that he can either just hold down or to knock out. Damir Hadzovic would be that guy. Cuamba is 24, man. He trains in Las Vegas full time with some of the best guys in the sport. He won against Matteo Vogel, our local Canadian, on the Contender Series. Boring fight, absolutely boring fight, but has fought in a decent level of competition, is wily, is durable. I could see him giving more problems to Oki than Hadzovic, so it's giving me a little bit of pause for concern, and I got to go back to the drawing board and just exactly see how much I love it, how much I want to utilize it. But yeah, at the end of the day, Cuamba is, I want to believe, a striker. I mean, his fight with the Matteo Vogel on the Contender Series, he was the one getting taken down. He was the one getting, I guess they both got takedowns. They both had ground control. They both had, decent grappling spots. But Matteo Vogel outstruck him by the numbers, outlanded him by the numbers. It's a boring fight. I thought Vogel may have won it, but they give it to the local Las Vegas guy. No problem. Dana doesn't like it, doesn't give him a contract. He wins one fight in between, which is a head kick knockout, all striking, and now he's getting Oki on 8 days' notice. Oh, it is. It's not enough for me to go for Cuamba, right? Even if you want to fight, you don't know. Hey, the UFC's saying if you win this one clean, there's an offer for you. Hadzovic's got visa issues, probably just got resolved. So you fight. Now, after the fight, do you have a couple beers? Do you go back to the hotel? Do you eat some pizzas? Do you hang out with your buddies? Hit a couple bowls? Who knows what you're doing? But yeah, I mean, your fight is concluded. Monday morning, yeah. Do you go back to the gym? Do you take a few days off? But it's like, no, they're calling. Did you take any damage? No. Jump back in, do a 3-day training camp. Can he win? Sure. But again, we're stacking cards against him now. The deck is now being stacked against him. So I got to go with Bolaji Oki, who again debut, and do you want to pay the money line and blah, 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 blah. Like the guy's explosive. I'm hoping he goes out there. I'm hoping he does the damn thing. And I don't know that he catches Cuamba as much as he just lands the bigger shots, outmuscles them a little bit where need be. And the judges appreciate the come forwardness. They appreciate the volume. They appreciate the bigger shots. And they give it to him. So that's all I can hope for.
Yeah, we got Loma Lookboonmee taking on Bruna, Brazil. Lookboonmee is a minus 265 favorite. Brazil can be had for plus 225. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, so it seems like it's Loma Lookboonmee all day, but again, it's just going to come down to wrestling, and grappling generally is the way to win these women's MMA fights. It's like you've got a clear-cut path to getting the fight to the ground, establishing top control. You're going to have a whole lot of success. The best girls are the ones that accelerate in that department. Lookboonmee is this 5'1" Thai girl with a very, I wouldn't say rich Muay Thai background, but something like 50, 60 fights in Muay Thai. But once she got with the Hickman brothers, once she now she's over from Tiger Muay Thai to Bang Tao, it's all been wrestling. They're wrestlers. The culture in Thailand is not wrestling. She's got that Thai culture, but the culture of the gym that she's in is American wrestling, college wrestling, freestyle wrestling. Go, 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 go. She lands basically takedowns in all these fights. Sam Hughes, 4 takedowns. That didn't look too bad. Lupita Godinez, she actually took Godinez down once. Got taken down 5 times, but took her down once. That's got to count for some. Denise Gomez, which is a common opponent between her and Bruna, Brazil. 4 takedowns in her last time out against Elise Reed with the 2 takedowns. Elise Reed, her last fight, Taekwondo expert, fights long, a little bit taller, a little bit, rangier, striker. How does the 5'1" Lookboonmee deal with that? No, she just crashes the pocket. She's able to cut her off when need be. She's able to press her up against the cage need be and get her takedowns. Easy money for her. Bruna Brazil is tall. Bruna Brazil has, I think, a 5-inch or 6-inch height advantage. She has a reach advantage. She's going to fight that same similar length type of battle. Lookboonmee, for as much as she has a credible Muay Thai background, as much as she can fight strictly a striking battle, being that short, I wouldn't like to see it because I think Bruna Brazil just keeps her on the end of the jab, keeps her on the end of their shots, causes her to, a little bit of pause and then overload her, right? Use that jab to kind of like defer her crashing the pocket and doing anything. As a striking battle, I think it would be close. I think it'd be competitive. Not saying Lookboonmee couldn't win or be competitive, but it would be tight. It's that ability to keep things tight long enough to get the takedown. And I think that's the key. Again, Lookboonmee, she's been mixing in takedowns in all of her fights. This is her first fight in a year, which is good and bad. Bad because of the ring rust, the inactivity, all this. Good because I think she's going to have made a lot of improvements. She trains full time. She does not have another job. She has very nice sponsors. She's got a good arrangement over there. So make it happen. And then for Bruna Brazil, like on the Contender Series, that
Marnik man.
March. Yeah. So nice little head kick finish. Obviously, the girl has credible kickboxing. She's long, she fights long, and she can put up a decent kickboxing battle, good striking battle. But she'd given up 3 takedowns, and it was a little bit concerning against Denise Gomez, against the common opponent. Denise Gomez took her down 3 times. The same girl, the same Denise Gomez who had got taken down 4 times by Loma Lookboonmee is out grappling her. So you're seeing, not using MMA math, and everybody hates that, but you're seeing that there are levels. There's levels here. You're getting cleanly taken down by somebody who's getting cleanly taken down by now your current opponent. And then she draws Sean O'Bannon. And I sat here with a straight face and made a case for Bannon. Simply because I don't actually think that this girl's all that good, that even Sean O'Bannon could beat her. And it's like such a bad fight. And yet Sean O'Bannon still almost won that bad fight, Paul. The striking was pretty much even. Bruna mixed in a couple takedowns here and there. That's fine. If those takedowns aren't on the table versus Loma Lookboonmee, going to be a problem. If the low volume that she showed against Sean O'Bannon, her willingness to move backwards, going to be a problem. Her leaky takedown defense in a small apex cage, going to be a problem. And yeah, I think the apex probably also favors Loma Lookboonmee because I think she needs an interpreter, right? Like she don't speak English to my knowledge, or at least not great. So like, yeah, that tight little private space where your coach will be able to tell the interpreter exactly what needs to be done. She should be good enough to just grind this thing up. So if you're looking to get a better price, I think you chase the decision. Like Loma, Loma's coming off a submission win.
Mm-hmm.
Her submission games probably has improved. And I'm thinking she just utilizes takedowns and top control, sprinkled in with some strikes and some leg kick standing to win the decision. I know it's like not the sexiest card, and I'm predicting a lot of these go to decision, and that's just how I think this one shakes up. It's not the most entertaining offering, but everything is entertaining if you can win money on it. So that's the angle. Bet these boring decision fights with one person has a superior wrestling skill set instead of these bangers that you think one guy happens to clip the other guy before they get clipped themselves.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. Yeah, it's like Loma came in as a Muay Thai fighter, but yeah, her wrestling, like she's out wrestling people who would classify themselves as wrestlers in the Sam Hughes, and obviously doing it against Denise Gomes, who out wrestled Bruna Brazil on the other side. And yeah, it seems like she just keeps adding new elements to that style of her game. She's obviously, 5'1", so she's always giving up a lot of size. Maybe in a different world, she fights, at 105 pounds. Like it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that, if the UFC had an atomweight division, that she would fight in that division. But being lower to the ground does have its benefits, and that's getting to the hips, finding takedowns, and you're very, very compact and hard to get off of you when you're hanging out in guard on top of that. So, yeah, the Muay Thai kickboxer has become a wrestler, and you know me, I usually look for the CF dot model, but the path seems pretty wise and pretty straightforward for Loma here. Just like strike as much as you need to, get takedowns, and rinse and repeat. Unless like I'm kind of looking through the record and it's just like, it's Bruna Brazil seems to be more of a striker than anything else. Like maybe she's got, basic jiu-jitsu and stuff, but she hasn't done anything too crazy on her record that would lead you to believe that like she's got super, super submission. Like she would have done it against, Marnik Man when she was taken down those 3 times. Like we would have seen a little bit more out of it. Of her submission game, that if that was a real threat for Loma, which I really don't think it is.
And you'll know this because you've been around the game as long as the game's been around, but the biggest concern at these type of greasy WMMA matchups is the armbar from guard, but Loma Lookboonmee doesn't have any arms. 61-inch reach, dog. It's just a little nub on there, which is probably why she's taking opponents down a lot these days. You're right in your assessment. She's a 105er, but she's a 105er that's learned to adapt, and I like what she's doing.
Yep. All right, we move on down. We've got Devin Clark taking on Marcin Prachnio. Devin Clark is a -220 favorite. Prachnio can be had for +185. Who do you like?
So you can make a similar comparison to the Loma Lookboonmee fight, where it's like Devin Clark is just a better wrestler. He can take down Prachnio. He can hold. Could he strike with Prachnio a little bit on the feet? Maybe bits and pieces, but just use your superior skill set. Use your wrestling. Take this guy down. The difference is Loma, she can take one hell of a shot. Yeah, Devin Clark can't. So as much as I see him beating Prachnio, and he should beat Prachnio, this one also does scream first round. Devin Clark, hot start like he always does, presses him up against the cage, hammer fist to the thigh, eventually completes a takedown, leans on him, grinds on him. First round, sure. Second round, maybe much of the same, but he starts to fatigue and he starts to run on fumes. And then all of a sudden he gets caught. And all of a sudden he does a stanky leg. And then all of a sudden he topples over. So that would be the issue for me. Prachnio is so limited. But he does have some decent power. And I know the version of Khalil Roundtree that he beat is certainly not the version of Khalil Roundtree who is kicking it present day. But it was a similar situation where it's like in the third round, Roundtree's tired and Prachnio is still throwing down. He doesn't have a great chin. No, sir. He does not have a great ability to take a punch and walk right through it. But Devin Clark, really not a power puncher, nor is he a striker. In fact, it's like I hope he comes out here trying to throw hands because that's going to lead to him getting clipped and getting knocked out. So Clark has that clear advantage. He's got the American wrestling. He's got that junior college pedigree. He's certainly just most of his training camps rely on wrestle, wrestle, wrestle. And that is a possibility here. Marcin Prachnio, I don't think is very good. But yeah, I mean, if he just lives long enough to tell the tale, he's probably going to knock Devin Clark out. And so when you look at his record, it's like, man, he gets taken down by a lot of these guys. Fair. But he had been taken down by Felipe Lins 4 times, let's say. But he outstruck Felipe Lins 74-64 and dropped a decision. Got taken down 4 times, never got submitted, never got knocked out, fought for the full 15 minutes, and outstruck him. Had an ability to get back to his feet, and when he got back to his feet, got busy with it. Lins, of course, is a former heavyweight that once upon a time, guy's awful. Once upon a time, won $1 million in the PFL, so he's not total trash. His fight with Vitor Petrino. Petrino's good, man. Petrino took him down 4 times. He outstruck Petrino as well. 55-44. Got subbed in the third round. Petrino was fishing for a couple submission attempts, so it's like he avoided the first couple, but it's late in the third, and unfortunately not a great go. But Petrino to me is better than Devin Clark. And again, he survived early. He got taken down early, worked his way back up to his feet, and starts to put a little bit of volume on you. He's got more power than Clark. He's got better striking than Clark. He's got more volume than Clark. There's an obvious hole in his game that Clark can exploit, but you'd have to be able to exploit it hard for 15 minutes. And like Clark I wouldn't say he doesn't have heart, but it's like he's a middleweight. He's always been a middleweight. He fights at 205, sure, and he's got giant legs on him. Oh my God. But outside of massively unproportioned thighs, he's a small guy, man. And he doesn't take a great punch. He's been rocked plenty of times. Some of these fights where he gets submitted by Kenny and Njoku, it's like he gets hit, then he starts to make bad decisions because he doesn't want to get hit anymore, and then he gets caught. Prachnio's not going to submit him, but Prachnio just needs to hit him, cause him to second guess himself, cause him to get a little bit desperate, and capitalize on that. So Mirzakhanov knocked him out. He's been dropped in quite a few of these fights. Alexander Rakic, that spinning back fist once upon a time. His UFC debut against Alex Nicholson. There's no doubt that there's a path to victory that lives there in knocking out Devin Clark. Is it going to happen in the first round? Maybe not. You like these long plays, right? Like what's a Prachnio third round knockout? Something like that is live on the table. Sounds crazy. Maybe it's crazy. Bookmakers will give you a crazy price, but it's possible.
Let's see. Prachnio round 3. 20-1. I mean, he's probably going to... I don't think he has any submission skills whatsoever. So what's him by KO round 3? 24. 24.
Yeah, that would be the move.
Don't hate it. I'm totally with you. It's like I totally see. Obviously, Devin Clark can utilize his wrestling, make this an ugly fight. I mean, even though Prachnio is taller than him by 3 inches, he's a little bit bigger. Their reach is pretty comparable, actually. Devin Clark, apparently, according to UFC stats, has a 1-inch reach advantage. But, Prachnio's legs are obviously longer. He utilizes those kicks. I suppose throwing those kicks, he's going to leave himself open to the takedown. Like, there's 100% a path to victory for Devin Clark. But
oh, yeah.
I'm more inclined to bet Devin Clark when he's an underdog because of his style. He slows down fights. He makes it ugly. But it's like, now you're asking me to pay minus 220 on a price tag for a guy that, like, when he wins, most of the time, those fights are relatively competitive, you know? Can he get takedowns? Can he hold top control? Yeah. But it's like Marcin Prachnio, you brought up the perfect examples. Like, Petrino is like a high-end prospect on the rise. And when they were on the feet, you know, Prachnio was kind of showing some holes in Petrino's game. Obviously, Petrino was able to get those takedowns, get him down, and then, you know, sealed it with a finish late in round 3. But, yeah, he showed that he was able to get back up, and he was able to make it kind of difficult. So I'm with you. Pretty clear dogger pass. And, I mean, if you're telling me to be sprinkling plus 2400s, I mean,
yeah, let's go, baby.
I can only hold myself in so much. You know, I like to gamble, so I will. Prachnio round 3, your sprinkle of the week. Jeremiah Wells takes on Max Payne Griffin. Jeremiah Wells a minus 160 favorite. Griffin can be had for plus 140. There's no doubt in my mind Jeremiah Wells is like, you know, I mean, he looks the part. Guy's super, super jacked. I believe he's a BJJ black belt. Just ends up in like a lot of like dodgy situations in a lot of these fights, Cody. You know, Blood Diamond, like right off the opening hop at the beginning of that fight, he's like trying to circle around the cage, almost blows out his ankle. That was weird. Semmelsberger, in a different universe, Semmelsberger, that fight gets stopped. Semmelsberger ends up winning because Semmelsberger rocks him. I don't know. Jeremiah Wells, he's obviously, you know, super, super built. He's got skills, and he's like, because he's so like strong, it's like if he lands an absolute nuke, he's going to cause some problems for you. But we've seen some like real inconsistencies with him as well. At minus 160 against a proven veteran, of a guy who's pretty, you know, durable, skilled, and well-rounded in the game. This is another fight that I'm tempted, Cody, to take a shot on the underdog Max Griffin here. What's your take?
Dude, 100%. This is a dog-worthy shot. Now, let's discuss this thing, because I don't know if I can get there, but I want to get there. Let's start with Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells knows where the bodies are buried. Don't know why they do this guy so many favors, but they do. He signs to the UFC, and because he's currently 37 years old, right? He signed to the UFC at, must have been 35? Yeah, just before shy of his 35th birthday. And yet he had less than 10 pro fights. So doesn't fight very often. He's a Renzo Gracie BJJ black belt out of Philadelphia. Guy's got a tight grappling game, but he doesn't really fight that often. He doesn't fight great guys. He's, you know, here and there once in a while. And he gets a big spot against Warlley Alves as a huge underdog and just bull rushes him and beats him. Warlley Alves, because keep in mind, he was a plus 210 underdog against Warlley Alves. Warlley Alves since is 0-2. He lost his next 2 fights after Jeremiah Wells. Then they give him Mike Mateta. He beats Blood Diamond. Blood Diamond is 0-2. He lost his very next 2 fights after he lost to Jeremiah Wells. Court McGee is 0-1 since he fought Jeremiah Wells and he retired. And Matthew Semmelsberger is 0-2 since he fought Jeremiah Wells. Those 4 guys combined for an 0-7 record in their fights after fighting Jeremiah Wells. He's fighting the absolute bottom of the barrel. And as you mentioned, a couple spots. Rolled his ankle against Blood Diamond and also kind of struggled to take him down early. Mm-hmm. His fight with Warlley Alves, he's running on fumes. His fight with Matthew Semmelsberger, he got rocked twice. Once he hit the deck, and yeah, a shittier rev would have stopped the fight. None of that bodes well. Then his loss against Carlson Harris his last time out, he was up 2 rounds. He won the first 2 rounds and got caught by an anaconda choke in the third. So do I see Max Griffin subbing him in the third with an anaconda? No. But do you know why he gave up that fight, being up 2 rounds? Because he's tired. He's super jacked. He's 37 years old. Doesn't have a ton of experience. And he doesn't have a ton of experience fighting deep into fights. So that's all problematic for me. Does he get takedowns here? against Max Griffin and make things difficult for him? Yeah, absolutely. But Max Griffin's far and beyond the best guy he's fought and should definitely pose him some problems. As we're talking about guys 0-7, bottom of the barrel, that's not the issue for Max Griffin. He's coming off a fight with Mike Morales. 2 fights back, he had a split decision, lost to Neil Magny, win over Carlos Condit. He generally fights good guys. But here's what I like about him that's super sneaky, flying under the radar. It doesn't look like a lot of his fights, especially when he wins his decision and he just lands a little more volume, and he's a generalist, he's well-rounded, but he doesn't do anything exceptionally well. But he's got really sneaky, badass power, right? If you look at his fight with Tim Means, it's a split decision win for him, but he did knock down Tim Means. His fight right before that, Neil Magny, it's a split decision loss, but he did knock down Neil Magny. The fight before that with Carlos Condit, he outstruck him 93-63, unanimous decision, but he did knock down Carlos Condit. And the fight before that, he flat out knocked out Song Kanan in 2 minutes. And Song Kanan's actually not all that bad, Paul Shaughnessy. So a knockout and then 3 straight fights with knockdowns. Like, he scored 1 knockdown in 4 of his last 5 fights. Does the knockout materialize? Maybe not, but like, he can touch you and he can do some damage. And the problem with Wells is the shots that Semmelsberger was landing on him didn't look that heavy. They didn't look that clean. It's like they'd hit him and his whole momentum would sway. Luckily for him, Semmelsberger cannot wrestle, and he was able to just take him down and kind of control him. But that's problematic, man, because Max Griffin can wrestle. He's a much better wrestler than Matthew Semmelsberger. He packs equal amount of heat. He's got way more experience. He's got better quality victories, and he's getting a little bit older. But Wells is older too, so this is actually a good spot for him kind of across the map. I mean, his last time out with Michael Morales, we know that Michael Morales can wrestle. Comes from I think his parents were like a judo background. Guy can grapple, and he went 1-for-1 against Max Griffin. And I would see Jeremiah Wells also getting some early takedowns. This becomes another fight, another situation where you may give up those early takedowns. Petrosyan might be giving up early takedowns. Marcin Prachnio might be giving up early takedowns. We need to get these guys to work, to fatigue, and we'll catch them late. There's other fights like Loma Lookboonmee. I'm not worried about that. She's not going to fade in that 3rd round. There's key apple pie shitters on this card who generally get tired in the 3rd round, and they're relying on wrestling against these superior strikers. This one becomes another one of them. Wells probably takes him down. He probably holds him down. He probably neutralizes him. But subbing him is going to be tough, and holding him down every round for 15 full minutes without getting hit is also going to be tough. So it's not like I run screaming saying I want the underdog in this spot. I recognize clear value in this spot. It simply comes down to it's a dogger pass, man. It's absolutely a dogger pass. And in the sane world, you'd maybe just take the pass. But on the Dogger Pass podcast, where you're required to make a pick, no. Take the dog.
Take the dog. Take the dog in the dogger pass type of situation. Yeah, cool. We're on the same page there. It seems like we're on the... I mean, last week when we were on the same page, like every single card, it turned into an absolute bloodbath. So I'm taking this as we are due, which is totally 100% a thing in gambling. That's just the way it works. We are so due, bro. Moving on down, we got Zach Pauga taking on Bogdan Guskov. -120 for Pauga, +100 for Guskov. Kind of like a tale of two styles here. Bogdan is going to come in there and try to take your head off early and often. And Pauga, it's like my biggest struggle with this guy is that like I don't really see much killer instinct whatsoever. He wants to fight his fight. He wants to fight at range. Obviously, he had significant success when he was on the Ultimate Fighter. But since then, his ability to take damage, getting knocked out by Usman, not a great look. My biggest struggle with him and why I have like a blood feud with him is like, mate, you took Jordan Wright to decision. That just doesn't happen. For like who I think is going to win this fight, I'm very, very torn. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. What I'm actually tempted on betting in this fight is the over 1.5 rounds. Because it's like, it's a pick'em. Over 1.5 rounds, -115. It's like, If you can bring the Beverly Hills Ninja, Jordan Wright, to decision, you can bring Bogdan to decision as well. As long as Bogdan doesn't knock his head off, which is obviously in play. But for a pick of the actual fight, I'm going to let you take this one, and I'll circle back. Because, like, getting knocked out by Muhammad Usman is concerning, 100%. But in fairness, that was at heavyweight. This is at light heavyweight. He did go to decision against Modestas Bukakas. Bukakas has been making some serious improvements in his game and is obviously long and all of that. I don't know. I don't think Bogdan's any good. Maybe he could clip him. Okay, I'll take Pauga, but what I'm actually interested in betting is the over 1.5 rounds here.
Yeah, well, the over 1.5 rounds because they're heavyweights and they're low-level heavyweights, and Pauga's probably going to look to just lean on him as he did against Jordan Wright. Yeah, right. Pauga's down into light heavyweight now. Yeah, it's not a sexy look. Maybe it's a bog, maybe it's a grind, maybe it gets that over 1.5. But I don't like the durability right here from Bogdan Guskov at all. I think he's been a can crusher, largely on the regional scene. Maybe the records look good, but click on, like, if it says 7-2 and you click on it and now it's 7-7, the guy's not good. He looked good at the time. Guskov got a quick quality little victory, a quick first round finish, but for the most part, not fully sold on this guy. I guess that 2020 Vyacheslav Vasilevsky, people will remember him from the Bellator middleweight tournaments. He's not that big of a guy. He moves up 20 pounds to light heavyweight and just dices Guskov in 3 minutes. Guskov, when he fights an actually decent striker, he can't take the return fire. When he fights guys that are half as good as him or half as small as him, and he's just putting pressure on them, yeah, he beats those guys. But ain't no marvel. So he comes in. Okay, where did the guy look good? Absolutely nowhere. I don't think he's got more than 3-4 minutes of cardio. I don't think he's got great takedown defense. I don't think he's got a chin. He's just one of these guys that's gonna try to punch you out. A power puncher, a one-dimensional power puncher who generally punches out cans. Not enough for me. When I look at Zhao Pauga, yeah, he's not very good. But when he was on when he was on the Ultimate Fighter, he's a 205er fighting heavyweights. He wins both of his fights on the show. Looked good. He actually looked like the best heavyweight. He's the number 1 ranked seeded guy, and he's the favorite over Kamaru Usman's brother, Muhammad Usman. He won the first round against Muhammad Usman. Overall, outstruck him like 32-16, but he ran into a big shot. Heavyweights be heavyweights. It happens. I think it messed with his psyche. He never been knocked out, and he had taken plenty of big shots in his career. So against Jordan Wright, who's so one-dimensional, but again, another one of these, that one dimension is his ability to be explosive with his arsenal. He's an offensive dynamo that'll put heavy pressure on you. So Pauga takes the path of least resistance. Now, keep in mind, here's a 205 that trains at altitude, has decent cardio, and is used to fighting bigger men. So it's boring, but it's effective for him because he's actually good at controlling guys up against the cage. And then the last fight with Modestas, as you mentioned, not a great fight. He struggled with the length, but of course, by the numbers, he outstrikes him 67-56 and has the one lone takedown. Loses the fight. Watch the fight. He's losing the rounds. The bigger shots are coming. He's chasing for the most part. But the work rate was there. He tried to implement the wrestling again. He did get the one takedown. It wasn't like it was some big blowaway performance. Now, he's not young, but I just think he's green. He's still adding elements to his game. He didn't have a ton of experience. It's not crazy to think he's going to get smidget better, the smallest smidget better. But in the event that he doesn't matter because I think it's good enough to take on Guskov. And so strikes per minute landed, I think Pauga averages about 4.5. Guskov, it's hard to say because he just has the one fight in the UFC against Oezdemir. But I think if he just tries to land those one big singular punches, Pauga presses him up against the cage, holds him there, makes him, leans on him, makes him carry his weight for a little bit, tires him out for a little bit. And then that second and third round, Guskov's going to be cooked. And when he's cooked, Pauga, who does not have cardio problems, should still be either pressing him up against the cage, making him work, or he'll let his hands go. And if he lets his hands go, he can knock Guskov out. I think a lot of guys could knock out Guskov. I think Zach Pauga could do it. Now, your theory with the over 1.5, I don't mind that. Because if Pauga's not stupid, lean on him for a round and a half and then look to take him 100%. He did it against Wright because it's the smart thing to do. Do it against Guskov. You lost to Muhammad Usman because he's not a power puncher, Muhammad Usman, by the way, but he was a big heavyweight. and he clipped you. Jordan Wright, he could maybe clip you. Path of least resistance, and he did that. This is another situation. Guskov could clip you. Path of least resistance. The difference is Jordan Wright had 5 fights in the UFC, 6 fights in the UFC, and trained at Jackson Wink, which was at one time a premier gym destination. He had some experience. He fought a couple rounds. Guskov's a sophomore outing. He's got 3 minutes of ring time, and generally his fights in the regional scene don't last all that long. I think Pauga could break this man. Does he get him right after that 1.5? I think a smart game plan would imply that, yeah.
All right. We got Hyder, Emil taking on Fernie Garcia, minus 190 for Emil, plus 165 for Garcia. Who you got?
So Hyder Emil's got apple pie shitter written all over him, but then he's taking down Fernie Garcia, who's moving up a weight class and taking the fight on like 4 days' notice.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't fade him. You don't fade him because now it's an undesirable spot. But I'm turning 33 this year, so when you hear me say stuff like, guys, 33 years old, like, I get it. It's a shot at myself. And it's not like you're late in life to be doing something. I'm in the prime of my life. I'm getting in the prime of my life. Best yet to come. But from an athletic standpoint, I should already be established in something like the UFC or in the NBA or in the NHL. To be 33 years old and be on the Contender Series, yeah, not the end of the world, but where was he buried up? How come this guy doesn't even have 10 pro fights left? And then you look at his regional show fights, Paul. Ignacio Ortiz, he wins a split decision over a 2-0 guy, okay? Then he beats a 3-1 guy at LFA 117. Devontae Sewell, very familiar with Devontae Sewell. I love to fade Devontae Sewell. He's a 9-7, middle-of-the-road journeyman-type fighter. And he wins a split decision over him as well. Should it have been unanimous? Sure. But was it a close fight versus a guy that it shouldn't have been a close fight against? Absolutely. And this fight is less than 2 years ago. He beat Chase Gibson, but Chase Gibson gave him a hell of a tough first round. He just ended up catching him in the second, and then bam, he's on the Contender Series. The fight on the Contender Series I thought was awful. Emil outstruck him 26-22. He also got taken down 5 times. He got about 4 minutes of top control himself. He landed up on top. He's a very physically strong guy. He's moving forward. He's looking to make it happen. There's just not much of substance to me that's actually happening. So I didn't think they should have signed him, but because he's 33 and he's out of Gilbert Melendez's gym, and it's like piss or get off the pot time for him, the UFC gives him the contract. They booked him against Shalayan Nurmbayaki. That would have been a tough-ish fight. They booked him against Melsik Bagdasaryan. That would have been an awful fight for him. None of those fights materialized, and now he gets Fernie Garcia. And so as we talked about with Fernie is undersized to begin with. He's moving up a weight class. He's had no success in the UFC so far, going 0-3. But the one thing that I will admit for this guy, right, is that Jeremy Newsom took him down twice. Brady Heastad took him down 3 times. And Rina Nakamura, who's a stud, took him down 4 times. He didn't look totally out of place in those fights. It's that clearly there's a takedown defense issue for him. Mm-hmm. Hyder Emil, I mean, he's coming off a fight against Emra Somnez where he was the one that got taken down 5 times on 23 attempts. And he himself never shot a single takedown. So yeah, the output's low because he's just constantly defending shot after shot, ending up on top. But one has to wonder, can he strike hard for 15 minutes? One has to wonder, is he suddenly going to go, hey, Fernie always loses when he gets taken down. I'm going to do something it's not my primary game plan. You don't know. You don't know. He might get caught in the moment of, it's my UFC debut. I'm in this tiny little Apex, which is weird. I've never fought. Like, I guess he fought in the Contender Series, but, it's a debut. It's a weird setting. Fernie's already got 3 fights in the UFC, and he's taking the fight on a week's notice. Like, the pressure's not really on him. He's getting cut either way. It doesn't really matter. Go out and fight your heart out. But Fernie usually is taken down all the time, so you're not seeing volume out of him. You're not seeing what he's good at. You're just seeing him on his back for the most part. If Emil does not do that, he's allowing Fernie to fight a proper game plan for a change and make something work. And being the smaller man, yeah, he's small. On the other hand, he's fast and he's got more volume. So 3 days notice, listen, I don't want to get behind it. 0-3, Fernie, I don't want to get behind it. Moving up a weight class, I don't want to get behind it. But it's like, because you can see the obvious issues with Fernie Garcia, don't let that fool you into thinking that Hyder Emil is suddenly like, maybe he'll go out and prove me wrong and be the pick of the week. Like, I don't know. It's just from a confidence standpoint, looking at it pre-flop, there's just so much for this man to still answer. And it's not, he's 25 years old and he just won a contract in the UFC. He's 33 years old and he has less than 10 pro fights. Do you see him getting marginally better between fights? I don't. I think this is the version of him that's going to compete in the UFC for the next 2, maybe 3 years, go about 2-3, maybe 3-3, and get released. I think that's where his ceiling's at. So it's hard to have confidence in a guy that you otherwise wouldn't have any confidence in just because he's taking on a short notice, small replacement who looks bad on paper, but is capable of coming in here and actually giving him problems.
So
I'll take Emil because I'm a coward, but like I don't love it, and it's not going to be high up this week.
everything you said led me to believe that like Fernie's the play, except for like moving up short notice, obviously. But like all these guys, especially when you have like these low, like guys are ready in Vegas these days, right? Like everyone knows these cards are coming up. You have 14 fights, like somebody's gonna drop out. Fernie would have. He has had such a hard, like not, I guess not. Getting taken down by Journey Newsom twice is like a really, really bad look. Brady Highstand's a pretty solid wrestler in his own right. I love Fernie. I mean, for what I'm going to remember Fernie most for is like I had a fat bag on Rinya Nakamura by submission. And him fighting out of those submissions. I had a fat bag on Rinya to win by submission. It was really, because I'm like, he's going to try to take him down. Like, he's not going to try to like grapple with this guy. And he did. And he had multiple submission opportunities. And Fernie fought out of them. Like, Fernie did pretty well in the grappling department against somebody of Rinya and Nakamura's, talent.
Exactly.
I was pretty impressed by that. Obviously, he's got dynamite in his hands. And Cody, he's Mexican. He's never been knocked out.
Surprise.
Mexicans don't get knocked out. It seems pretty clearly a dogger pass type of thing. I'm gonna wait until weigh-ins. We'll see like what these guys look like when they stand next to each other. Obviously, Hyder and Mill looks pretty jacked. Maybe there's like a massive size disparity that I'm not accounting for. But if this is based on the stats of that Contender Series fight, if this turns into like a striking match in a small cage, give me the guy with that obviously has never been knocked out, and it's shown that he can bang on the feet for sure. So, I mean, if you have Journey Newsom trying to take you down, you know that you're probably throwing some heat on the feet. Finally, we got Daniel Marcos taking on Arichi Lang, minus 250 for Marcos, plus 210 for Arichi Lang. I don't know if this is like actually the bout order. It's kind of, I guess, is this punishment for robbing Davey Grant last time out? Is that what's going on here? I mean, I guess he's had 3 fights that have been canceled in between that.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think
but it's weird to see like a guy who's 15-0, be buried on the early prelims like this in Daniel Marcos. What's your take here, buddy?
Yeah, I would think he's obviously pulled. I don't know. It's not like they're always his fault, but Victor Hugo missed weight, right? So they got on the scales and they missed weight. And this is like the dirty aspect of the game that gets overlooked, right? I've been on the promotional side of things. I've been on the matchmaking side of things. I've been on that side of it. When a guy misses weight and the fighter declines, he has the right to do so. The smart thing is likely to do so. It screws up a lot of stuff for you. You're committed to this fight. So when it's 2 pounds, the guy's 10 pounds, yeah, you get it. When it's a few pounds, it's like, man, you don't want to fight him. No, man, I think I'm going to sit this one out. It's like, really? Yeah, okay. Now we got to move the card back a half hour. Now we got to, have a production meeting. And now we have to do all these different things. And we want to book this guy and he wants his show money. And it's a mess. So I don't know. I don't know if they were upset by that, or I don't know if they were upset by he couldn't get his visa in time for the Carlos Vieira fight. Like, I don't know. But yeah, to have a 15-0 guy who's 2-0 in the UFC, 1-0 in the Contender Series as your curtain jerker on an awful card, in an otherwise really fun matchup. Like, Richie Lang's never been in a bad fight. He loses all the time. He's not the most skilled guy, but the fights deliver entertainment-wise. So unless like the Peruvian time zone, they want this guy early so they can watch him, or the Chinese time zone, they want their guy on early.
Peruvian
so
time zone will be the exact same time zone as Vegas, man.
I guess South America's a straight shot up. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe what's the Chinese time zone? Is it 12-hour difference? Maybe 11-hour
You know,
difference?
that's probably the more likely reason why it's on. That actually makes a lot of sense. Like, what time is it? Time in Beijing. Because, like, when we're recording this right now, it would probably be pretty close to. It would be like, yeah. So right now, when we're recording, it's almost 5 o'clock Eastern. So it's
I don't know if that would make sense.
Well, right now, because me and you are in different time zones, so that's like completely throwing me off. So I'm in Atlantic time, so it's 12 hours difference from me. So maybe when does this card start? I think you're onto something with the Arichi Lang Chinese market. Why they would bury him there? Actually, no, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever because it's first thing in the morning. No, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
That's what I'm saying. I'll defeat my own theory right now. It doesn't matter because they've got so many time zones on this card. This card's got guy from China, guy from Peru, guy from Mexico, United States, Uzbekistan, Poland, Thailand, Brazil, Belgium, Armenia, Ukraine. We already say Poland?
I think you may have said
Poland. We already said Poland. What is that, 13? 14? Sweden. Sorry, Sweden in the main event.
12.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let me carry it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 11 different countries.
My friend.
Yeah,
did you say Thailand? I don't know if you said Thailand.
Yeah, it's 11 or 12. It's 11 or 12 different countries, but the main thing being is that it would be so hard to be like, oh, this guy's a local star to this area. It's like main event, co-main event, the rest of it, slap it together. I'll give you a quick pick and we can move on, get out of this thing. Arichi Lang, for as fun as he is, he's generally moving forward and he's generally falling behind on the punch count. Now, yeah, most of the guys he's fighting are volume punchers, but he is just generally one step behind. His fight with Jeff Molina got outstruck 189 to 116. Pretty crazy he put up 116, but he almost got doubled up all the same, and he got dropped twice. He got outstruck by Jay Perrin 88 to 72 and got taken down 3 times. So takedown defense has been an issue, but it's more concerning that he's falling behind on the punch stats all the time. Him and Ayman Zahabi, he gets knocked out. So now he's got 3 problems. His cast iron durability, it might be in question. His murderous Mongolian punching power, it's kind of shelved because his volume's low. His takedown defense, it's just not good enough. He wins his last fight against Johnny Munoz, another fight where he got taken down, another fight where he had low volume. But yeah, he showed off that big power and scored a knockdown over Munoz. So he's not a write-off. It's just he's one of these serviceable guys that gives you rounds, that comes forward, and allows the superior fighter to kind of get some confidence going and learn a few things along the way. Marcos at his best is more of a volume guy. He stays to the outside and he's going to pick him apart. If you look back at his fight with Brandon Lewis, he landed 81 significant strikes and a knockdown, but he was largely getting out wrestled by Lewis. Lewis went 2 for 15, I think, on takedowns. So to land 81 significant strikes while a guy's trying to cling to you the whole time, it's impressive. His fight with Simon Moraes. He knocks him out. It's before the under 1.5. He knocks him out in under 1.5 rounds and had landed 53 significant strikes in under 1.5 rounds. That puts him on pace for another over 100 significant strikes. The volume's there. And then what the hell was the effort versus Davey Grant? He just froze up. He just stood there and he stared. And Grant worked him, man.
Grant good, though. Grant is good. Grant's always underrated, though. Like, I think this is...
Yeah, you're right.
I'll let you finish, but I've got an idea of what to do with this fight.
To me, he was a favorite. We played him. We were hoping he would look a lot better. I thought he lost.
Grant, and I thought
decision.
I got robbed.
I was so happy when they gave it to Marcos because I had Marcos, but it was like he stood and he stared, and it was partly Grant's good, and it was partly he was worried about the counter punching, and it became a low volume affair where he made it very subjective. He did get one takedown, but he held Grant down for like 6 or 7 seconds, and that was it. So not much doing from it. When I look at this fight with Arichi Lang, he himself is also low volume, but a big power puncher. So if you're worried about that power, if you decide to approach it the same way you approach Grant and be a low volume technical affair, you're playing right into his hand. And on top of that, his biggest weakness is his takedown defense. And Daniel Marcos is probably not going to try to exploit that. So you're having a subjective kickboxing match which is low output. And the judges, they gave you the decision last time. They could screw you the next time. You need to worry out for that. Again, what's the reasons why you don't got the cojones? Fight, I ranked this guy as a decent prospect. And as you said, Grant is no slouch, and I'm going to agree with that. Winning that fight does mean something, and hopefully we see a better version of him. He's pulled out of a couple fights, but one was his opponent missed weight, and the other one was visa issues. So there's no underlying injury, there's no inconsistency, there's no, anxiety. There's nothing that you should really be concerned about. He's still 30 years old, but just getting into the prime of his life. Love these Peruvian guys. They're cast iron. They got good cardio. And last but not least, with Orichi Lang, if the durability is a little off the table, the output's a little bit low, the takedown defense isn't necessarily there. Does he spring the upset? Probably not. So he's live, 35 fight veteran, but I think the superior fighter will probably win outright, and that's Daniel Marcos. So Marcos by decision would be my best get, my best guess. But again, this is just like a very international, tough to call card. You want to have way more confidence in some of these guys, but you don't because of past inconsistencies.
I think it's like such a massive step down in competition versus David Grant, who's been around the block, has fought some of the best guys in the division for Daniel Marcos. It was a bad performance by Marcos. Frankly, I thought David Grant won. Am I biased? Yes, because I had a David Grant ticket, but like Marcos by KO is like plus 300. And I mean, there's only a few props or only a few shops with props that are open. Maybe after last performance, he brings it a little bit more to the table here. I know he's not like some sort of big time knockout powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination, but neither was Zahabi. And that fight was over super fast. Maybe that's just MMA being MMA and that, that his just caught him in the perfect spot. Those types of things happen. But like plus 300 for Marcos KO seems pretty generous in this spot, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a massive mismatch in terms of overall talent. So yeah, Marcos is the pick for me. I'm going to see like if other books open maybe a slightly better price than the plus 300, but don't hate it. Yeah, I haven't actually made any sort of bets this week. The guys that I have circled, obviously Marcos KO I just talked about. We both like Jack Hermansson, Dan Ige, Ihor Potieria, G-Rod. I'm not sure what to do with him. Maybe he's a parlay piece. Michael Johnson, probably just a straight play there on his money line. Marcin Prachnio and Cody's, massive long shot, 24-1. Marcin Prachnio round 3 KO. I'll be throwing a sprink on that. Max Griffin. Fernie Garcia is considerable, but I want to see weigh-ins on that. And then, as Marcos KO, which we just talked about. Hit him with the PRP code.
PRP, I think it's going to be Dog City this week. I just don't have enough of them. But we're going to start off with one, Jack Hermansson. We're going to go with Dan Ige. We're going to go with Ihor Potieria, which is dog number 2. We're going to go with Gregory Rodrigues, Michael Johnson, Armen Petrosyan, dog number 3. Carlos Prates, Loma Lookboonmee, Marcin Prachnio. Man, I just feel so sick to my stomach. But I guess that would be a decent dog number 4. Griffin, okay, I'm not going to take Prachnio. I'll go Devin Clark because I'm a coward. But I will take Max Griffin. That's my dog number 4. And we're going to go Zach Pauga, Hyder Emil, and Daniel Marcos. So 14 fight card, 4 underdogs. I could see 5 or 6 of these dogs coming through, as Paul and I highlighted in some of them. There's a lot of variation. There's a lot of action that could go down, and hopefully it's in our favor. So I think I'm going to chase some of these props. I don't know if I'll release like a tweet or anything like that. If you've listened to the show, you know what we like and what we don't like. But because of the large number of fights being 14, there's an LFA card, which is equally as good in some spots as this card. There's a BFL, I think, on the Thursday. There's a bunch of other MMA actions. Like, I think I'm just going to try to pick and choose and then force some stuff. But the anchors this week, as disgusting as it sounds, like let's just say life was good, right? Zach Pauga's only minus 125. There's so much value there. Armen Petrosyan is even money. Tons of value there. Michael Johnson's only minus 130. Like literally, if just those 3 guys hit on a parlay, it's 6-1. because it's actual value. It's just like which one of them screws it up. Zach Pauga, well, he's done that a few times. Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson's made a career out of shitting in the apple pie. Let me tell you. Armen Petrosyan, dude, that's my guy. But is he gonna be sick again? Is he gonna be ill? Like, you never know. There's always variance. But this would be a card if we could tie some winners together. It would pay handsomely. And of course, the way our system is, you lose, you lose, you lose, you win. And when you win, gotta win bigger than what you've been losing. So be a great week to start off on that, Paul.
It would be a great week to hit the PRP this week. For you and for everyone. All the PRP faithful. I mean,
just give me my top 3 tickets.
What you do is really impossible, though, right? Like, I mean, here's the truth of the matter, though. Not everyone tails every single one of your tiers there, right, Code? Like, a lot of people just do the flat PRP, and then if it gets to the final fight, they hedge at the end. But yeah, yeah. I hope you had a PRP this week, because then I will hit a PRP this week. But that is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Megan and Cody Saftik, I'm Paul Shaughnessy saying goodbye and good luck.